Welcome to The Bond, your connection with nature. So you're a discerning viewer, right? You're somebody that wants to know about high quality brands, and you always go back to the same brands because you know that they have quality. Well, the same thing goes for something like the brand of horse that you use. If you haven't heard of the AQHA, that stands for the American Quarter Horse Association. And this is a group that started back in the 1940s, around March. And what they wanted to do was start a dedicated group of enthusiasts who wanted to show the value of a certain type of horse. And they began registering the American quarter horses. Well, it was a small organization at first, but about a decade later, they started doing shows and other official events and competitions. By the 1970s, their registration numbers had grown. And by the 1980s, they were pretty much a global organization. But in the 2000s and basically today, in this century, they have grown to leverage innovation and modern technology in order to help support this wonderful niche type of horse pedigree. And what they wanted to do was have a certain set of standards for both breeders and trainers. So you would have your pedigree evaluated. You would have both the sire and the dam from clean, traceable bloodlines where you knew that their offspring would also be something that would have full pedigree documentation. And this is taking into consideration that breeding is a discipline as well as training, a separate type of discipline which needs to take into account not only the physical stature of the horse, but also its personality and what is good for it. How do you keep it healthy during competitions? So the breeder would need to submit to a variety of different regulatory stipulations and guidelines. The trainer does also, and they need to make sure that they are humane and they are basically bringing out the best that that horse can be in the nicest way possible while still being rigorous enough to have that education of the horse. Well, today we have both a trainer and former breeder who has experience with both building up a breeding program and currently training in a certain type of horse. She's an AQH, a American Quarter Horse Association trainer, and she is lucky enough to have opened up her Gold Creek Quarter Horse Ranch in Paris, California, to anybody that is interested in training. And we are going to have the opportunity to talk with her today. So I'd like to ask, Kelly, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I sure can.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I wanted to say thank you so much for joining us here today. We really are so fortunate to be able to take advantage of your level of expertise. And so I was wondering if we could start in with trying to understand why you were gravitating towards this particular type of horse.
Well, and my background, and my family background was with Morgans, and
Okay.
when I moved to California from Canada, I dabbled with some Morgans. And eventually I decided, well, I'll try out the reining, and I became a reiner. It was a good challenge.
For our audience that doesn't know what reining is, could you explain that and how it might differ in rodeo or whatnot?
Okay. Rein, we call them a reiner. So basically it's a reiner horse. Most of the events we show in our NRHA, but AQHA also hosts reining classes. Mm-hmm. It's strictly a pattern class, and horses are judged on performance. And it's sort of the glamour sport of the AQHA performance horse. The horses gallop fast circles. They slow down willingly, do small, slow circles. They spin on their hind end. And they're probably the trademark is the sliding stops that they do.
Now, how is that beneficial if you had them on a ranch? Are any of those activities that you're training the horse to do something that they would use on the ranch, or is it just for ornamental, a little bit like dressage?
A little bit ornamental, but at the end of the day, if you got to go gather up cattle, better be able to make your horse move forward at a rapid pace and then be able to slow him down and rate him and be able to turn a cow. And so there is practicality in having your horse very handy and very responsive to your aids. So most of the reining horses that get trained up as reiners, oftentimes they go on to second careers, but that training base gives them a place that they're so very broke they can go and do a multitude of other things.
So reining is basically something that's necessary for the ranch because you need to deal with a large herd of cattle, for example. Yeah. But those skills can be used for, as you said, a second career for the horse after they have decided they don't want to do ranching anymore.
Yeah. And oftentimes, sometimes they're showing reining and then they'll cross over to the ranch events or to the rein cow horse events. They can kind of go a few different disciplines.
So now I know that some English saddle is an Olympic competition, but Western saddle sports usually are not. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think that ship already sailed and it didn't fly. But maybe at a future time, with now everybody wanting to be a cowboy, the Olympics will want to see some cowboys out there.
So you would like to see Western saddle sports be honored at the Olympics globally? So it'd be an Olympic global competition.
Sure, why not?
Okay, well, that's excellent. Can you tell me about any sort of memorable moments you've had at a competition? I noticed that behind you there's a beautiful golden horse. Could you tell me a little bit about how you obtained that?
So actually, I coached the person that won that.
Okay.
That award. And she was a gal that came through my lesson program and kind of wanted to dabble in reining and kind of got pretty handy. And I had a horse available by the name of Walla Walla Wisdom. And so we went to was the first time the AQHA run the Level 1 West Championships in Vegas a few years ago. And she was fortunate enough to win both the rookie and the Level 1 amateur reining classes on the Walla Walla Wisdom Yogi.
You're mentioning that you are the one that helped train the person to obtain this. So does that mean that someone who's brand new to horse reining or even horseback riding, basically, they can come to you and learn themselves?
Oh yeah.
Could they bring their horse? They could bring their horse to you, or do you have horses that they would learn on?
I usually try and keep something that they can get on and ride a little bit. It's hard to teach somebody what riding a reining horse feels like unless you get to sit on a reining horse and kind of feel how responsive and trained and respectful of the aids that they are. So you kind of ride that horse, you can kind of see it, but till you get to go sit on one, you don't really know. I mean, I have a kid now that's just started riding the reiner, and he's like 8 years old.
Oh, how cute!
And he's starting to learn the maneuvers and stuff, so he's pretty fun to watch. And he kind of came through my lesson program, and we started in the round pen on the lunge line on a 13-hand pony that they owned, and now he's gotten he was about 6 and not very big, so it took him a little time to kind of get going, but he does some junior rodeo, and now he's kind of coming back and kind of thinks that performance horse is pretty fun to ride around.
I think the approach might be different, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you're brand new to horses and you just want to start on one of your horses versus you've been trained on an English saddle and, with dressage and jumping and all, and then they want to learn a horse. So how do you teach someone or approach somebody that's got English training to learn Western?
Well, if they've learned to 3-point, which is the position you put yourself in if you're going over fences.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take them a long time to learn to sit on your pockets to
Oh.
ride Western. That seems to be the struggle. But the performance horse, I mean, riding a horse and changing. And I have a lady that's very successful in the ranch riding that came out of an English background and had done 3-day eventing and done some
Mm-hmm.
polos, all English stuff. And she swapped over to the Western pretty easily.
Okay.
Some people, it's an easier transition than the other. Probably the hardest part when you're going to go ride a higher level Western performance horse is when you're going to go ride them in one hand and have them neck reining respectfully and light off your hand and being able to use your legs all at the same time.
Yeah.
That's a whole different feel than riding an English horse that rides to the contact of the bridle.
So,
Because a finished Western horse doesn't need the contact of the bridle to be able to do the
Right.
job.
right. That's excellent. Do you ever have to do anything with your heels as far as, because you're not, Western always, I have in mind that you have stirrups or that you have spurs. But I know that that's not very comfortable for the horse, and I know it's not terribly effective. So do you have to retrain them on that?
Yeah, and again, back to the people that have learned to ride 3-point with their legs
Mm-hmm.
and have learned to use some kind of set their legs on those horses that they use their legs a little bit to balance.
Mm-hmm.
That's maybe not going to work quite as well on a Western horse. If you have a duller horse, they'll become duller. If you have a more sensitive horse, they're probably not going to take that quite so happily. And again, you got to be able to take your legs on and off, because every
Right.
time you use your leg on a Western horse, it should mean something. So, yeah, and it's the same as English, but different. It's same but different.
It's a language,
use
with
your legs.
the pressure point language.
Yeah.
So have you ever had to be a horse psychologist, meaning that there was a horse that was just not properly in the right mood and you really needed to work with it like a horse whisperer, so to speak, and get them in sync with their rider again?
Probably it goes the other way. I probably
Get the human in sync.
The person to go to the horse. It's sometimes a little harder to change that horse's mind. But I mean, if you have a horse that wants to consistently be herd bound or he draws to the gate, you
Mm-hmm.
kind of got to that before you're gonna have success elsewhere. You got to get them at least paying attention to the person more than paying attention to the gate, or the other horses. You got to fix that before you're going to go. You got to get A, B, C done before you're going to go to E, F, G, and
Makes
A and
sense.
B is from point A to point B without leaning somewhere. So if they're leaning, you got to fix that.
So it's really more instructions to the human, how the human should adapt to the horse's personality. So how do you approach the concept of teamwork with your students?
Teamwork with the horse or teamwork with me?
Well,
Teamwork with our team of people that help make these horses go around.
do you have, if someone wanted to take advantage of your skill set, they would have to work with your whole team, right? You'd have to have the team work with you as a trainer, the team work with the horse as your partner, and also the teamwork of going into a competition or actually just getting an activity done.
Yeah, when that's part of the deal, when you move to a specific trainer, it doesn't matter what kind of trainer, you got to kind of figure out if the program's going to work for you, and the program is sort of the team. Can your horse work with that trainer, and then can you work with the trainer? Does everybody have the same expectations? So everybody needs to be on the same expectations for everything to work out. And we also have some other team players that don't get very much credit, but if I don't have somebody nailing some shoes on that keeps those horses sound, I got a big problem. And if I don't have a vet that can kind of help us out if we have a situation with the horse, then I have another problem. So we have other players in the program too,
including
but
vets.
yeah, and I don't do a bunch of vet work, but if I need to, I have vets that I can talk to and we can get it worked out, and hopefully the horse is happier.
That's good. That's good. So you're always considering, it sounds like, the well-being of the horse.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if the horse isn't a happy horse, he's probably not going to go around so well.
Well, exactly. Just like regular people, right? If we don't have a good day, it might put us out of sorts. So how do you evaluate a horse to see if they have the right temperament for a competition? I mean, have you ever looked at a horse and said, oh, they're just not going to be on the competition circuit?
Well, and that's a tricky question because at least here in the Southwest, which I'm based in California, so I show in California and then show against the people in Arizona. The level of competition, both in the reining and the ranch riding, is extremely competitive. Doesn't matter whether you're in the amateur level 1 or the senior or the reining, it's very competitive. So when you're purchasing a horse, you need to think about what level of rider you are and what level you want to show at. So hopefully you find a horse that fits your needs so you can ride it. Doesn't matter how good the horse is, if you can't ride it and operate it, it's not going to work for you. How competitive you're going to be, you're probably not going to do that for a year. I mean, I tell people all the time, when you buy a new horse, it's probably going to take you a year to really get the buttons all dialed out and really get handy with that horse in the show pen.
So how does rodeo sort of fit into that? Is that one of the, what's your thoughts on rodeo?
I don't really have anything to do with rodeo.
So you don't train for that.
And I'll tell you where the other deal is. The breakaway and the rope horse futurities have like reining horses, because reining horses are so broke. So that's also driven up the price of reining horses, and sometimes, and it's a good place for some of them to go. Maybe reiners that got a little bit too much motor to be really reiners kind of find that second career over in roping
in rodeo,
and they transition over there pretty easily because they like them because they're really broke. So they can go to roping on them pretty quick and be very successful with them.
And I wanted to sort of ask, if somebody wanted to take advantage of your training, of your skills or your expertise, how do you approach engaging them? And when it's local, it might be a little easier, but what if they're far away or out of town? What's your overall process for how they can reach out to you?
They can reach out to me, and I'm going to tell you, and I don't keep a very big string of horses, more so just because I'm pretty hands-on and I put a lot of time into them.
Okay.
And I mean, that's the deal. When your horse goes to the training barn, that's the number one complaint of people is my horse didn't get rode by the trainer. Got rode by an assistant, maybe.
Well, have you ever gone on an auction with someone and when they wanted to buy a horse, or have you are you a personal shopper for horses?
It's hard finding horses, that's the hard thing these days, finding horses for sale. You're gonna look, I can find, if you don't kid yourself, if you tell me you want to buy a horse, I'll find you a horse to buy pretty quickly, amazingly, shockingly quickly. People that say they can't buy a horse in this horse market.
So is there
expectations, unrealistic budget, or are not talking to the right people, because there are horses for sale in all budgets. You just have to decide what you can live with and what you can't. As I tell people, they're all used horses and they all come with baggage. So you got to try and figure out what the baggage is before you buy it, and if you can live with it. Kind of like buying other things too.
Well, I've heard in Southern California there's actually quite a few wild horses that are still roaming free. Is that true, or?
Yeah, I think they're mostly up north. Well, I'm pretty sure they're pretty much all up north, and they do have the Mustangs are another. I mean, they have Mustang adoption events all over the place here. Horses that are gathered, and I think some come from Nevada and Oregon, but yeah, there's still some of them up north, I believe.
But your horses are all with pedigree papers, so you don't have any
So,
wild horses,
no,
do you?
no, we're pretty much all AQHA.
That makes sense. So I was just sort of curious if there are any sort of final words of wisdom or life lessons that you've learned that people could take from your pearls of wisdom, things that you've learned in the process of setting up your business, your ranch, and how they could learn from home, or simple tricks that they could do if they have a horse at home.
I think the most important thing is to realize if you've just gotten into the horse business, you probably don't know as much as you think you would do. Your best bet is to get on the phone, get on the chat, get on the Facebook, and start asking questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question. There's people all over the place that are very willing to mentor, both in the reining and the AQHA industry. If you have a question and you ask it and somebody will give you an answer. You might not like the answer, but you're going to get an answer. And that being said, everybody needs to be realistic on what they have and what they can do. And it's a fun sport to get into. It's great for kids to come through the program and learn how to ride, and all that goes on with owning a horse and competing a horse. And we've just had a lot of fun with it. And I still have fun. I have an older lady that's kind of living her dream. She ended up with a horse. Yep. She's an older lady, and she came from the English background. And she came to me 3 years ago with a great gelding and says, I want to learn how to ranch ride. And I'm like, well, okay. So I got her, and she never rode one-handed. So we got going one-handed, and she got going with this gelding and had a little success, kind of learned how to lay out a pattern. We had a lot of OPs off pattern the first year, maybe the first 2 years, till she learned how to lay out the patterns. And so this went on, and then that horse died. He had a heart attack.
That's tragic.
It's tragic.
I thought it was going to be a happy ending. You got to end in a happy ending, Kelly.
We're going to go through, that was horse number 1. That's where we started. I said, well, I don't have a big budget, but I want an AQHA, and I want to show the West Coast ranch horse, want something I can do that with. And I said, well, let me look around. And I came up with a mare. And that mare's owner had passed away, and the spare was sitting in a pasture. And so I said, well, we're going to try her out. I had trained her up as a 3-year-old. And so she came, and the people that brought her said, oh, by the way, it's a little bit lame. And I'm like, okay, what do you, a little bit lame. And so she came, and she was a lot lame. And so, and I said, well, I'll still go ride her around and see what she goes around like. And she was pretty. And so I rode her around for a few minutes, and I said, well, she still changes leads both ways, change leads. And I said, well, and we talked about it. And I said, well, we'll kind of vet check her and go through her and see if we can fix her up and get her going. And so we did. We got her sound, got her horse showing, and so she started to horse show on this mare.
I think I have to say that's such a beautiful story, because you took someone who wanted to do something different, and you found a horse who would have been rejected because they were lame, and you actually were able to overcome that obstacle in the horse, and you healed a hole in the heart in your client, in your customer.
Okay, so I got this is like a 3-part story. So anyway, so she showed this mare, and she won quite a bit. Did very well, West Coast. And the mare got a little bit sore, and so she says, well, I'm just going to kind of let this mare take it easy, and we'll just kind of idle her around. And so that's fine. And she says, well, now I have a happier budget. And now I want a horse that I can show AQHA level. And I'm like, okay. And so, and I had a client that had a pretty nice gelding here, and I said to him, I said, well, you want to sell your gelding? And he says, oh, okay. I said, we got a shot. I got a lady that wants to horse show it, and we'll go horse show it. And we'll see what you can do, and he can move on to another horse. So my very good client, and that's another story, said, okay, we sell the horse. So
we don't have time for all of your stories, but you're a fabulous yarn teller.
So anyways, the lady buys the horse. And so she started out with him last year, and he was a little bit of a donkey for her. He drug her around here, and he drug her around there, and, he just kind of meandered around and looked pretty, didn't really get everything done well. So we rode him all winter. Of course, we put some time into this thing, and we got him all going. And so now this year, this horse is doing really well. In fact, she's won 2 all-around amateur AQHA at 2 West Coast QHA horse shows.
She's a blue ribbon champion.
And so she's become a champion. This horse has got
that is impressive.
He's done very, very well. So, and she'll go to the AQHA World Show with them this year. So
I think that's brilliant.
3 horses and 4 years to kind of get this all done, just to give you a timeline.
So don't fantastic.
If it doesn't work out, because it might not.
But that's a real testament to you as a trainer as well, because you saw something that was broken and you said, I can fix this. And you not only fixed it, you turned it into a winning championship teamwork. That's that take on teamwork. Well, I really appreciate what you're doing. I want to just say a quick word to our audience. We will be right back after these messages. I so enjoyed that conversation with Kelly from Gold Creek Ranch in Paris, California. She really was enthusiastic about her sport, explained what reining was, and then gave a fabulous example about how she took somebody who had a hole in their heart, found a horse who other people had rejected, and then made them into a championship team. So I think that that's fantastic. It's a real inspiration that you can take on to your own life. And so with that, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. And until we bond again.